Listen, Athletes Forum Podcast, College Sports Crew. What's going on? It's your boy Jamal Clay. Yo, we're back with another one. This week is draft week, right? So we got a little bit of a quicker episode today. I'm trying out a new mic, so if it looks a little weird, don't worry, we'll get it adjusted. But we're doing a mock draft today. We're only doing the first 10 picks. It gets a little crazy after that. It might even get crazy in the first 10 picks. We're only going to do the first 10 picks of the Athletes Forum Podcast mock draft, as tomorrow is draft day. Breaking news, me and my guy Snacks from College Sports Crew, we're going to be doing a live reaction show tomorrow during the draft, towards the tail end of the draft. So make sure you tune in for that as well. And then everyone's favorite topic, all right, everyone's favorite friend of the show, The Wheel, she's back. We got another college fan base check-in, and we'll see what campus we're going to be stopping into within the top 25, right? Well, before we get to it, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment. Let me know what you guys think. All right, it's an interactive podcast, and we'll get things rolling. We had a couple great shows today on College Sports Crew. We had Chasing Omaha by my guy Pops, right? We just had our guy Chris, who has a new show called Talking Dogs, right? I have a Florida edition of that called Talking Gators, and we'll be back soon because there's been some Gator news that, we definitely have to talk about, right? So Talking Dogs right before this, and now we got Athletes Forum Podcast in the wheel. There is no We Talk Ball tomorrow, just so everyone knows. But without further ado, let's dive into it. If you're a fan in the NFL, this is probably one of the more hype weeks of the NFL schedule, one of the more anticipated weeks of the NFL schedule, and that is the NFL draft. The NFL draft is tomorrow, right? So let's do a mock top 10 of the NFL draft. And these are players in regards to where I think they may go based on what I'm reading. I'm no guru, so don't come at me and saying your mock draft sucks, right? If anything, your reading sucks, right? So let's dive right into it, right? I'm going to go first 10 picks, right? I think we all know the first pick of the draft, right? It's kind of been highlighted since, this guy really started his playoff run, and that's the Raiders going Ty Simpson. No, I'm just playing. Fernando Mendoza, the worst kept secret in the draft. That's going to be happening tomorrow. He's going to be a Las Vegas Raider, not an Oakland Raider, a Las Vegas Raider. And this is you've seen what the Raiders have done, everything leading up to this point. They've been trying to build a team for Fernando, even bringing in Kurt to help him develop when he comes to the building. So we won't waste any more time on this. Fernando Mendoza going to the Las Vegas Raiders. Next one, kind of 50-50 proposition here, right? Kind of where are the Jets going to go? They're going to go edge. They're going to go edge, right? So if they're going to go edge, it's going to be David Bailey, it's going to be Arvell Reese. My logic behind this pick is the Jets are all in for 2027, right? You see the way they're stocking picks. You see the way how they're building their roster. So I'm not saying that they need to win now, right? But they can afford getting a project. They can afford getting somebody with the higher upside, all right? And I went Arvell Reese to the Jets, right? I think if this guy who really played the position without even really being coached that well last year performed that well, right? Imagine what he's like when he gets coaching. Imagine what he's like when he understands the game from the way that people see him, right? People see this guy as the next Micah Parsons. So if we can help him understand the game and develop him into that, we can afford a down year versus immediate production, David Bailey. So that's why I went with Arvell Reese in this pick, right? Again, they're aiming for next year's draft, right? So with that being said, why not get a guy who has a higher upside and make this a developmental year for him, right? Because they got time. They got time. At least that's how it's being portrayed to me. They got time. Now, if they go winless, time's going to run out. Time's going to run out. My next pick, the Arizona Cardinals are on the clock. This is a hot spot. This is a trade spot, right? Look for teams like the Cowboys or the Chiefs to trade into this spot, but I'm not projecting trades with this pick. Now, with this pick, I'm going to go best player available, all right? I'm going to feed into the hype. I'm going to say Jeremiah Love is going to be an Arizona Cardinal, right? This is a team that's won defense over the past couple of years in the first round. This time to get some playmakers. This time to give Marvin Harrison Jr. a a sidekick, so he's not the only target. It's time to enhance our run game. Now we still don't know who the quarterback's going to be, but with Jeremiah Love in the backfield, he could do more than just tote the rock, right? And Arizona needs everything. They need everything. I think ideally they're going to want to trade out of the pick and, again, look for the Cowboys or the Chiefs to maybe trade up to this pick, right? But if not, and they stay put, and we're not projecting trades in this mock, right, I'm going to go with Jeremiah Love, all right? Now that he's off the board, where do the Titans go? Because we saw Love being triggered towards the Titans for a while now. So where do the Titans go? And I think this is where Rob Saleh wins the battle between him and Daboll, right? You think about two coaches that are both in the New York market and both got fired because they lacked offensive production. Now, the best offensive talent that's on the board or would have been on the board is gone in Jeremiah Love. Now, do you go the receiver route? Do you go a Tyson route? Do you go a Carnell Tate route? If that's the case, I think this is where Robert Saleh goes and gets his guy. And being that, David Bailey's still on the board, I don't think he wants David Bailey. I think he wants a Fred Warner type, and I think he's going to go with Sonny Styles, right? I think this is the perfect guy for a Robert Saleh defense. You saw what he did with the Jets. I'm from Jersey. I used to work for the Jets, right? I saw how he built that team and what he built it around, and he likes having those fast, athletic linebackers. He had C.J. Mosley. He had Fred Warner up in San Fran. He was even a big fan of Tremont Edmonds when he came out of college. Sonny Styles is a perfect fit for what Robert Saleh wants to do, and I could see, I could see the Titans going to get a Sonny Styles. Right, let's go to the comments. All right, we got someone. My guy Chris is in the building. Let's go. My guy Chris is in the building. All right, let's keep going here. What we got here? All right, the 5th pick, Giants. Giants on the board here. All right, Giants on the board. Where do the Giants go? You're hearing a lot of talk about Jordan Tyson. You're hearing a lot of talk about they like this guy, and obviously he just had his individual workouts this past Friday. And everything that he was able to perform, the Giants like, right? How much do you believe the Giants right now, right? Because I remember just a couple years ago, they were all out on Kayvon Thibodeau, and they ended up drafting him with the 6th pick, I believe. So when you get closer and closer to the draft, the less you kind of have to tune out. Jim Harbaugh, does he want to go up front with, on the O-line? Is it too early for that? Does he want to roll with the big nasties, right? Does he want to go David Bailey, who's still on the board right now? Right, I think he goes and get his Kyle Hamilton. I think he goes and he gets Caleb Downs. Right, Caleb Downs, the guy that can play safety, guy who could play nickel in the box, blitz. Right, a guy that can make up for a lot of production that could be lackluster at the linebacker level. And we all know linebacker is a weakness. But remember, Giants did sign Tremont Edmonds as well too. So they're gonna have a lot of speed. I think they go Caleb Downs here. Now they could pull a trigger and go Tyson, but I think Harbaugh goes and gets his Kyle Hamilton. I don't think they go – if this happens, I don't think they go David Bailey and crowd up that edge room, right, with the guys they already have in there, Tibbs, Abdul Carter, right? I forgot the other guy's name who's blanking me right now. But I think they go Caleb Downs with this pick. Now, that leads me to the 6th pick. This is another hot spot. From everything I've been reading, this is a hot trade spot. Look for the Rams or maybe the Jets, maybe the Chiefs, try to trade in and get a receiver if he's still on the board, right? In this case, the receiver is still on the board, so look for that to possibly take place here. But because we're not projecting any trades, Browns, what do the Browns want? I thought Carnell Tate here. I thought Jordan Tyson, right? I thought Carnell Tate and Jordan Tyson, but everything we're seeing, reading, Browns want to go O-lineman, right? So if they go O-lineman, I'm going to get who I personally think is the O-lineman in the draft, right? And that's Francis Mauigoa, right? More of a right tackle, but this guy's flexible because he could kick inside and play guard. He can also play center as well, right? Now, the Browns desperately need a left tackle. So the reason why I said this was a hot spot to trade out, because they could possibly trade back, get maybe a Caden Proctor, get maybe a I forgot his first name, Freeling from Georgia to play left tackle, right? So look for the Browns, I think, to possibly trade out of this pick. But if they go lineman, I think they go on Francis from the U, right? Oh, my sound seems off. All right, give me 1 second. I'm trying out a new mic here, but I might have some issues. So this is the part of the show where we pay the bills, right? Athletes Forum Podcast, College Sports Crew, right? Tune in, subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the TikTok at College Sports Crew. Not to mention, we're on Twitter as well at College Crew. Live shows throughout the week. We're primarily a college network, right? College sports network, especially when it comes to football, right? But as you can see, we're talking draft here. We're also talking baseball, right? So tap into us and make sure you subscribe if you haven't, right? And also turn your notification on if you're not subscribed as well too. Give me 1 second while I make this.
We call I don't follow NASCAR, but we had to change the tires real quick, right? That's all we had to do, right? We had to change the tires real quick. But let's keep it going. So Browns go Francis Mauigoa, right? Commanders, they're on the clock. If this could fall out this could happen pretty smoothly for the Commanders if the board fell this way, right? Because now there's no way Dan Quinn is passing up on a edge rusher, right? An edge rusher, and possibly what most consider the best right now edge rusher in the draft, right? And that is David Bailey. David Bailey goes to Washington, right? Now, Washington, they could go a number of ways here, right? They could go receiver. They could go DB, all right? They could go DB. But if the board fell like this and David Bailey fell to the Commanders, I think Dan Quinn goes with David Bailey in this pick right here. So he shores up the edges on that defense. But again, keep an eye out for Mansour Delane here. Keep an eye out for Tate or Tyson if they're still on the board here, okay? Next, we got the Saints. There's been a lot of chatter about the Saints. There's been talks about the Saints moving up in the draft. There's been talks about the Saints staying put, taking best player available. If that's the case, before I give you the guy who I think they may take, I think this would be the area you start looking at Ruben Bain. I think this would be the area you start looking at Ruben Bain and what he could possibly bring and be opposite of what's his name down in New Orleans. I forgot his name, right? But he's been there for a while. At the end, actually, no, I think he's a free agent now. I have to look that up. But we all know the knock on Bain with his short arms, and I'm sure we'll dive into that. I know Snacks has a thing for Ruben Bain in regards to how he feels. But needless to say, who do the Saints go? Some may say he's the best wide receiver in the draft, and I think they go Tyson in this pick. Now, the reason why Tyson over Tate, especially for the Saints already have a Carnell Tate type of guy, all right? They're in Chris Olave, right? Tyson gives them a different type of guy, a physical type receiver, a receiver who can run after catch, a receiver that 2 years ago at Arizona State had a lot of drops, played through injury. This past year, limit those drops. Despite not being healthy, one of the things that I think gets lost when talking about Jordan Tyson is he really drastically changed his drop percentage, right? And you don't do that without hard work. So I think the Saints go Tyson in this pick. All right. Number 9, KC's on the clock. This just seems, how last year where everyone was talking Vegas, getting Ashton Jensen, it was almost every mock draft you saw. This is kind of what I'm seeing with the Chiefs and Mansour Delane, right? Every mock draft I'm seeing is them going after a corner. You could also think, again, if Francis is off the board here, why not go Spencer Fano, right? Sure up that O-line. Why not go a receiver? Carnell Tate still on the board. Get Pat Mahomes another weapon. You can even think a Kenyon Sadiq from Oregon, but is that too rich for a tight end? Maybe this is a spot the Chiefs trade back out of, right? I don't think this is a super hot spot, but I would say lukewarm as in a trade destination. But we're not predicting trades. Mansour Delane goes to the Chiefs. And then for the final pick in the top 10, Athletes Forum Podcast, College Sports Crew, picks 1 through 10 mock draft. Giants are back on the clock, right? Falls right into their lap. They get their weapon, right? Now, they could go offensive lineman here, right? But it's really the one thing that the Giants, the Bengals, and you can even say the Cardinals are going to have to battle the Giants, the Browns, and the Cardinals. The one thing they're going to have to battle and figure out is the Cincinnati Bengals theory. A couple years ago, Cincinnati Bengals had to choose between getting the tackle from Oregon, plays for Detroit. I forgot his name. I don't know why he's blanking on me. Probably because I'm on live TV or live YouTube and it's hot. All right, between him and Jamar Chase, right? And they went with Jamar. Led them to the Super Bowl, right? Browns in that position, Giants in that position, Cardinals in that position. Battle between getting a top-tier offensive weapon where you could limit the deficiencies on the offensive line by getting the ball out quick or protecting the quarterback. In this case, they went with what the Bengals did. Giants get Carnell Tate, falls to them, so they get their receiver, they get their DB, and I'm sure they'll get an O-lineman at some point in this draft, right? But that is the Athletes Forum Podcast College Sports Crew mock draft picks 1 through 10. Again, we're on tomorrow, so I'll dive back into these picks and kind of see how I did. I'll get Snack's opinion, and we'll take it from there, right? And we'll take it from there. All right, everyone's favorite segment. She's back, ladies and gentlemen. You know who I'm talking about, all right? And it's the wheel. It's the wheel. So you guys know how this works. For those who have been here, locked in with us, this is how the wheel works, right? Projected top 25 preseason college football teams, right? We spin the wheel. It lands on the team. We do a fan base check-in, right? We do a fan base check-in to see how everything pans out, right? So let's go ahead and get this baby warmed up. The wheel, I made sure she was working. So ladies and gentlemen, the wheel. The wheel landed on Utah. We're going to Salt Lake City. The wheel landed on Utah. We're going to Salt Lake City. So let's talk some ball. All right, let's talk some ball. The Utah Utes, right? That's an interesting name. The Utah Utes, right? So let's talk about good old Utah. And things have changed. Things have changed for Utah, right? This is not the same Utah team. This is a team for the first time in a while without head coach Kyle Whittingham, who's been there since Urban Meyer left, right? Right? This is now the Morgan Scalley era, right? In Utah, right? So what does the identity look like? Utah, known for a team primarily that will dog you through the run game, that will play hard defense, that you went to Utah and it was hard to get a win from the Pac-12 days to even the Big 12 days, right? Fell off a little bit last year, right? Battled some injuries, but needless to say, they finished 14, get a nice bowl win, right, this past year. Lose Kyle Whittingham. I think they were ready to move on from Kyle. Now, what does this team look like now? Let's dive into it. Key returners for Utah. You see the guy on the screen, Devin Dampier, right? You see him, right? Devin Dampier threw for 2,490 passing yards, a 24 touchdown to 5 interception ratio, only completed about 63%. However, 835 on the ground with 10 touchdowns. This guy, damn near, you could say, 34 touchdowns, right? 34 touchdowns for Utah, given a different dynamic, a quarterback who was a little bit more mobile than the Cam Rising, that was there, right? So, Utah, being that they have Dampier coming back, that's a huge plus. That's a huge plus in how Morgan Scalley is going to get off on the right foot heading into the season, heading into another Big 12 season. Not to mention, Dale Bray had a great freshman year last year. He's coming back. He has a lot of momentum as well, too. On the defensive side, Jackson Benny, right? I think he had 4 interceptions last season, right? 4 interceptions last season. And then you can't forget about Cash Dillon, and I'll explain why when we get to that segment. And we'll get there very quickly, right? But you can't forget about Cash Dillon, 3.5 sacks last year, 35 tackles, I believe, right? So they got some key players coming back at key positions, running back, quarterback. They even have 2 quarterbacks actually that could do damage, right? And then they got a defensive end, and they got a DB as well too. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, right? The elephant in the room, and that is them losing their main guy. Where's he at? I forgot his name. Let me look it up. John Henry Daly, the Michigan. Maybe one of the top 5 defensive players in the transfer portal this past year. Lost him, follow Kyle Whittingham to Michigan. So Cash Dillon now has some big shoes to fill, right, in regards to that production, right? In regards to that production. People forget Utah's defense, especially up front, lost all their starters, whether it was to the draft or the transfer portal. On the offensive side, you lose your both left and right tackle, who are going to be draft picks probably before Saturday, right? So Utah's got some catching up to do, right? They got some things they need to glue together. Now you think about that. When you talked about Cash Dillon replacing John Henry Daly, who's replacing the O-lineman? Utah, what's his name? Calvin Obot, 5-star offensive lineman. Utah's highest rated recruit is coming in to compete for one of those offensive lineman spots. Not to mention, transfer offensive lineman sophomore Cedric Joseph from Montana State is coming in to compete for one of those left or right tackles, right? So they're going to be young, maybe a little inexperienced, right? But it also helps when you have a mobile quarterback. How does Morgan Scalley make sure this team doesn't take a drop off and really could get back to the team that a lot of us thought they were, right? And really contend for the Big 12, right? Really contend for the Big 12. Let's dive into their schedule. All right, let's dive into the schedule a little bit. Now, you look at their schedule. All right, week 1 versus Idaho. Comfortably should be a win. And you got Arkansas. Silverfield, right? Really taking over that team now. What is that Arkansas team? This might be their first real test for both teams. Utah State should take care of business. Iowa State, they lost a ton of guys. What's that team going to look like? Nobody knows, right? Kansas, you start getting the Big 12 play. Colorado, Houston, Cincinnati. And then you got the Civil War, right? Not the Civil War. Wow, I really messed that up. I don't mean the Civil War. The rival versus BYU, right? The rival versus BYU. The Holy War. Jesus. Don't get mad at me, Utah fans. I'm sorry. All right. And I know this is my first time being introduced to you guys down in Salt Lake City. First time you're probably watching me talk ball. My bad. The Holy War. The Holy War versus BYU, right? Which is going to be a big game. But look at the rest of their schedule. Arizona, TCU, West Virginia, a team that I think a lot of people are sleeping on is going to be good. But this is a very manageable schedule for Utah, right? A very manageable schedule. They could easily get back into conference championship play, really, looking at this schedule, right? It's not a hard schedule, especially looking at some of the teams we've already done, right, with this wheel. It's probably the lightest out of all the teams we've done so far, out of all the teams that we talked about in the top 25 thus far, right? Very manageable schedule, right? So what do they do with it, right? And this is going to be a big test for Morgan Scalley because, yeah, the schedule's not overly hard, but with that comes expectations. How do you manage those expectations? What's the identity of this team? Young on the offensive and defensive fronts, right? Question marks heading into spring ball, right? And Utah fans, if you're in here, drop a comment. Let me know what you think. O-line, who's replacing the production, right? How quick can those young guys develop and catch up, right? Not to mention, you're replacing every starter on the defensive front. How well can they gel, right? How well can, they play as one up front, whether it's stunning, switching, right? Cash Dillon has to be the one to lead that charge, right? And then Dampier, is he enough did he do enough to take his game to the next level, to take Utah to the next level? Utah fans, talk to me. Drop a comment. Let me know what you guys think. I got one. Clip that and get Utah fans pissed. Yeah, Utah fans, you got to be upset with me. I called the